Hello, this is Taha.
This is Anaina.
This is Movie Masala.
And we're here to yap at you about films we watched recently.
And today we're doing
All That's Left of You?
And Crime 101. Okay, so I'll start.
Well, I'm pretty much in between positions right now. I'm looking to pursue a career in hospitality, so
Yeah. What did he tell you to do? Who are you working for? Answer the fucking question.
touch me.
Answer the fucking question. Fucking around.
I'm not sure if I should call it Crime 101 or Crime 101.
I think the
I guess
American way is
101
101.
Yeah, so let's call it 101 instead. So it's made by Bart Layton, who's the director as well as the writer of this film. He's made a few films before. He's not made that many films before. He's made The Imposter, which is like this crime documentary, and American Animals, which he won a BAFTA for Best Upcoming Director, which is like pseudo documentary crime film. So a person who's done crime films, basically. His like bread and butter up to this point.
Yeah.
That's mainly what he's done. Right? So this film it's a crime caper. It's a hectic heist. It's a terrific tense time and other alliterations that I was thinking of in the cinema while watching this.
Sure.
So the plot follows Chris Hemsworth's character, who's mostly in the film called Mike. That's not his real name in the film, but he calls himself Mike. And you have him basically who meticulously plans these heists and is like your standard like film protagonist thief, by which I mean he's good looking, he doesn't hurt anyone, and he's not violent towards anyone either.
And he's also white.
And he's white, which also really helps. Yes, that's also true. The thing is, I would act like, oh my God, the film like doesn't really, yeah, obviously he's white. But not that the film like really shines the fact that he's white, but the film doesn't ignore like the people of color in this film and in the specific way of addressing it.
Okay.
I'll come to that a bit more at the end, where the film does do more than just a very generic film, right?
Okay.
So you have basically four main characters in this film. Mike, played by Chris Hemsworth. There's Detective Lou, played by Mark Ruffalo. You have Cherien, played by Halle Berry. And you have this other guy, I think, Orman, played by Barry Keoghan.
Okay.
That's like your main four. And all of their lives are basically intersecting. Like the film starts off with like showing you everyone's kind of like morning routine kind of thing. And you're not sure for the first 20 minutes how they'll connect each way. Obviously, Chris Hemsworth's the guy doing the thief, and you understand that probably the detective's going to be the one investigating it. But you're not sure where Halle Berry fits in until like 20 minutes into the film, where you're like, okay, now I understand how it's going to happen.
Okay.
The thing is, when I saw this film, I saw the advertisement, and basically whenever we have like this very strong genre films, which I mean, like, it's like a very popular genre, like heist films.
Yeah.
It's a very 4-quadrant genre.
Yeah, you have a certain like set of characters who perform certain like roles and responsibilities, and that's how it goes essentially.
Also, like, it's something that everyone watches. It's like not like romance or fantasy or like a horror where it's a very broad genre that appeals to a lot of people.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it appeals to me, and I'm, as we've established, not so much a fan of the jump scaries and a lot of like crime adjacent genres. Yeah.
Like basically the reason I bring that up is when I see the poster for this, when I see the marketing for this, which feels like a standard crime film with a lot of big name actors, the first thing that comes to my head is like, this is a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
It just feels like Netflix movie. But when you watch it, and thankfully I watched it in the cinema, I feel this is like 20 to 25% too complicated, or not complicated as much as like there's always something enough going on that you can't watch this film while also looking at your phone.
Okay, it's a very low bar, but you know what? I get it.
Yeah.
Enough for me to be able to say this was genuinely interesting.
Yeah. And secondly, why I'm like, this is not a Netflix film is because there's actually decent color grading throughout the film.
It's not all like yellow or like dark.
Yeah. I mean, it's still the teal and orange color grading that is like the color grading 101 that they'll teach you in film classes.
Yeah.
You know? but it's there and it's used in effective manners.
Thank God, I guess.
Yeah, it does feel better polished and better made than like the standard generic Netflix film.
Sure.
And I think one thing that immediately stood out to me from that was the cinematography of this film. I think the chase sequence specifically are really exhilarating. They're really fun. There's one at the start, which I'm like, it just really hooks you in really well. And there's one towards the end, which is also really good, where Chris Hemsworth's character is chasing Barry Keoghan's character. And they're chasing each other, but they're almost crashing or something. And it doesn't happen enough that you sort of lower your guard down. And as soon as you lower your guard down, it's like a thread that's being pulled and you're like, it's fine. And then it snaps and like a full car flip happens. And it's just done simply, but done really, really well. And it is really good in what it does. And I really enjoyed those sequences.
Okay.
There were points within that where I was like, my only complaint with this sequence is I feel some of the shots don't last long enough. Like you show this little turn or something, or like this quick dodge, but then you cut away from that quickly and change camera or something. And I was like, no, it's just so much more fun to stick to it and like hold on there a bit
It's
more.
over edited.
Yeah, in some ways it feels like overdone. So I think that was more. That's like my first thing that. And then second thing I talked about was it does have more of a theme to it, right? All of these characters, specifically the ones played by Halle Berry and Mark Ruffalo, all of them feel like they are in some levels underdogs.
Okay.
Specifically with Halle Berry and Mark Ruffalo, they're clearly meant to be like these decent people in an indecent world.
Okay, people who are trying to do their best.
Trying to do the right thing as well, right?
Sure,
so
yes.
With Halle Berry's character, she plays this like person who works for this major insurance company who insures for like billionaires and stuff like that.
Okay.
You can see clearly that she's like kind of fed up with these people. Like it's obviously these people have so much money and like it's like, what am I doing kind of with my life? And I'm not even progressing much in work. And one of the better things this film does is like Halle Berry is not playing like a 30-year-old or something. Halle Berry is like in the film, she's 53. So she's playing her age. And that age and to some degree her race, not as much, but definitely the age plays a factor in the film, plays a factor in like how the younger woman at the firm is now the fresh person to send out to these rich clients, because that's the actual thing that they're using, these older men are using to get in clients.
Okay. We love to see women not being aged so aggressively down that it's unrealistic, or age aggressively up.
Yeah. And it's also the age plays a factor in the film, so it plays a factor in her character's motivations. The character is frustrated with these men who just view her as this bait, basically, to use for these clients and stuff. And sure. I think that adds a more fresh perspective to the film. Within Mark Ruffalo's character, he's clearly this cop on the force who's like, I think I know how to do it. And everyone else and the chief commissioner, person is like, just get in line. And there's like literally a scene where one of the other officers shoots an unarmed kid, basically. And then like the force gets behind him and it's like, no, he was armed and stuff like that. And Ruffalo's like, no, he was not. And like he's again told to get in line. And the thing that I feel separates it out even more so, I hear, is like other films also do this. Other films also give you these like perfect moral centers, in some senses. But I think firstly, one difference is that these are real things.
Okay.
The people like the insurance brokers or the cops, they're not cartoonishly evil. They're not planning like something that's unrealistic or like, no. It's not like they're like corrupt. It's like, no, this is just like how police work. This is how these rich insurance brokers work. So it makes them feel more authentic and like...
It's like people who are trying their best in systems that were not designed for you to be your best version.
Yeah, I think that's where it works better. So a lot of this helps the film stand out as well. It's a good film, I think. In a lot of ways, it really does stand out. A lot of people are comparing this to Heat because, again, it's in film set in LA and it's like a crime film. I think, again, it's not as good as Heat in my perspective. Obviously, I don't think anyone's saying it is. But I think it stands out on its own and it's a good film to watch. There's a lot of good shots, great city shots, great car shots that help it stand out a bit more, right?
Okay.
In terms of like acting, I really think Halle Berry is really good in this. because, again, Oscar-winning actor.
Icon.
Chris Hemsworth's not bad. I can imagine like multiple other people doing this. Barry Keoghan, I love him. He just is such able to play this little shit so well.
I can see that. I can sense, like, from what I've read up about his character in this film. I really, really see it.
There's a scene where Chris Hemsworth is confronting him, and they're in this like 7-Eleven type place, corner shop type place. And he goes like, who sent you? He sent you. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not gay. Who, your boyfriend? Even if I was gay. And I was like, you little shit. Like, you're getting on his nerves so well. Like, I would just be so annoyed.
Yeah. Like you said with Chris Hemsworth, like, anyone could have done it. This one, like, there are a few actors I can think of who can play such a character, but Barry Keoghan feels like the better choice.
Yeah, Barry Keoghan feels slimy in just general. Like, he has a face that looks slimy very easily.
I agree, yeah.
And lastly, like, I think Mark Ruffalo is also good. Mark Ruffalo is a good actor. I genuinely do feel sad for Mark Ruffalo because he's just like so easy to see as Bruce Banner for me now that anytime he's doing something else, I just can't help but like get a bit distracted thinking about that.
I know, and the thing is, even when he's playing Bruce Banner, he gets overshadowed by everyone else. So then you keep constantly thinking of them as this one character who is not really so much important anyways.
Yeah.
But I've seen him in a lot of other things, especially in like a lot of dramatic, partially comedic roles, and then some rom-coms as well. 13 going on 30 I'm thinking of. And he's really versatile. He can play like a lot of different things. Like, he adapts really well to the script and kind of setting and genre he's in.
He's so good in Poor Things. He's so good in Spotlight. Yeah,
like, he can play an asshole really well. He plays such a good asshole in Poor Things. And then you see him...
He's such a pervert as well.
Exactly. He's so, like, to borrow what he said about Barry Keoghan, Mark Ruffalo doesn't look slimy, doesn't feel slimy, right? But he plays such a slimy guy in Poor Things.
Yeah.
And then you watch him in 13 going on 30, and he's so wholesome and warm and just, like, loving, and you're like, yes, I love to see this. Like,
I just think Mark Ruffalo can act all of that. His face is just too distinct for me to, like, you know.
That's because of the success of the Avengers.
Yeah, I think maybe that is just physical appearance doesn't change that much in that sense for me.
I get that, yeah.
So I think overall it's all of those things. My last thing that I want to end, not the best note to end this on, I think the ending of this film just doesn't feel satisfactory to me. Percy, there's some plot points where it's like, you were doing so well that I just feel like you ignoring these things feels lackluster to me. Like, there's this whole scene where they find just the tiniest bit of DNA of like Mike on this car, and this is how they tracks him. And I'm like, there was DNA left at the final crime scene. Couldn't they match it again? Like, did you not think of this?
Loops were not closed.
Yeah, some loops were not closed. There's that. The second thing, there are three things. The second things is Monica Barbaro, who plays this love interest for Mike. And I'm like, there was no need for this. She was so underutilized, and like, it feels so like improperly done. I was like, you could have just cut it out and it would have been fine. I don't think it adds much. That's sad because I don't think that helps. Monica Barbaro is good. She could have done better. And lastly, for a film that understands more of the nuances, there's literally a scene as well in the start where he steals from these diamonds from this jeweler, and the jeweler goes like, when the police are interviewing him, I was like, do you do this to all people or only immigrants? And so it's like, the film understands, like, there's politics at play, there's race at play, there's age at play, you know? So for the ending, to just have these four characters get like these happy endings, and the overall system to have not been addressed at all, just feels a letdown to me.
I see that. It's a valid criticism I think I have. I think we've had multiple times on this podcast as well.
Yeah.
I get it, yeah.
So that's my like three things with this film. Things that don't work for me. And it's just the ending the most, which just would make me go like, I don't like a neat little bow, because the whole time you were telling me that poor people are shunned out, this and that, and all of those things. So none of that to be realistically addressed. And the people that we followed, they were never really that poor or anything to begin with. So it's not like we were following someone who needed to pay rent very desperately or something. It just feels like you understood some things, but I don't think you really were able to tie them off at the end.
Sure.
Yeah. that's it.
And suitable segue, I guess, is Mark Ruffalo, because he is one of the executive producers on the film I'm going to talk about, All That's Left of You.
Ooh.
سلامتك عمي.
الله يسلمك.
مش في منعت تجول كمان نص ساعة؟
لا لغوه.
الحمد لله.
بابا أنا عارف بتأكد إنك نفسك تاخذني معك ونشتري بوظة مشانك. أنا موافق أجي معك.
موافق تيجي.
موافق عشانك.
عشاني.
So basically, this film is directed and written and stars Cherien Dabis. And essentially, it tracks 3 generations of men and boys from this one family in Palestine, told through the lens of Cherien Dabis's character, Hanan, telling the story of her son, and then his grandfather, and then her husband. So it works as this film of a family's history, essentially.
Okay.
Alongside then the history of Palestine. We start the film basically with Hanan's son, Noor, participating in a protest in Palestine in a refugee camp in occupied West Bank. He essentially gets shot. And we don't know whether he's dead yet. It is implied that he is shot. And then, we cut to, as though Hanan is telling us, the viewer, she's going to tell you the story of her son, how he got to this point, but she needs to start with his grandfather. And then we end up back in Jaffa in 1948. And then the story basically goes through how his grandfather, Sharif, was attempting to defend his land against the occupation by the Israeli Zionists and, the establishment of the Israeli state, and how he went to a prison camp, and then how he got out, and then they ended up in the refugee camp in occupied West Bank. And then to the point where one of Sharif's sons, Salim, is now older and has his own kids, the oldest of whom is Noor, and how Salim is this teacher who's used to have this revolutionary fervor, but it's not there anymore. And then a lot of the story is spent on the relationship between Noor and Sharif, so grandson and grandfather. Now, the grandfather influences this deep love of the motherland for the son, and the conflict between father and son that is kind of mediated through the grandfather. And then we get to Noor and Noor's kind of death, essentially. But he's brain dead because he's been shot in the head.
Okay.
And the last third of the film is spent with Hanan and Salim debating whether they should donate Noor's organs. And this is particularly important because they're in Haifa, which is occupied territory, and so they're there is a moral conundrum of whether their Palestinian sons' organs will go to Israeli people, and it's a child's organ, so it'll go to children. So what if the child grows up and serves in the IDF?
Yeah, that sounds like, not in a way to diminish the narrative, but that sounds like a hypothetical question you would pose to someone to challenge morality or to make you conceive of nuances in these typically black on white scenario.
That's essentially what the film does because of the kind of fictional nature and the way it's kind of framed and depicted. But then you are also reminded of the realities of Palestinian children's organs being not donated, but taken to give to Israeli children. So there's that element. But the film definitely does treat it like what you were saying, this more of a moral conundrum. The political aspect of it is obviously not absent, but the problem is framed as more moral. And I think that's where some of my criticism of the film comes from, but I'll get to that later because I want to start by what I really liked about the film. And I liked the fact that it maps out this history in a very linear way. And I know we often praise films for being non-linear and fucking with the timeline and stuff.
The Nolan special.
Yeah. I feel like with this particular story, it works really well because of the way they move timelines.
Okay.
I'm talking very specifically about the cuts from Sharif as a young man to Salim as a young man to Noor as a teenager. Specifically from when Noor goes from a young boy to a teenager, within the span of 10 years. It's this amazing scene where Noor has slammed himself at like 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, slammed himself into his room after calling his father a traitor. And then he opens the door and he's out as a 16-year-old who's as rebellious. So you can kind of fill in the gaps of exactly how much his rebellion has festered and grown. And then because this is like 2/3 of the way into the film and we start initially with Noor's story of Noor, you know, protesting and getting shot at, we kind of understand where his like defiance comes from at this point. So that's why I really like the kind of linear and clear-cut way in which these stories are told. Other than that, I think the cinematography is beautiful. It is done by Christopher Aoun. I think it captures equally an element of nostalgia and grief. So funnily enough, this film was meant to be shot in Palestine, but then the current genocide began. And so they had to shift filming to Cyprus, Greece, and Jordan. And if you use your brain a little bit, you can tell that this film wasn't filmed in Palestine or Israel, obviously. Because they're not going to do that. But the way it makes it look and feel like Palestine, especially for these characters, I think is really, really incredible. So yeah, I think the cinematography is great. I think the music is also really well. The music done by Amin Bouhafa. I don't know if I spoke about this in Hamlet, about the music being extremely like evocative and like bringing forth a lot of emotions in particular scenes where not a lot is being said. But this film, the music does the same thing. It has the same effect of making you feel emotions that aren't exactly being said.
It works in the background as like this way to heighten what's going on in the scenario instead of just like...
Exactly. So I definitely think that there are so many components that make this film really interesting. And one of them is this kind of the ethics and morals it brings up of Palestinian people. In the grandfather's case, about whether they should leave their land or not, whether they should abandon their homes, whether they should surrender, whether they were right once they get to Salim's age, whether they were right to have abandoned and not stayed in Jaffa, which is now occupied at this point. In Salim's case, whether he should fight for the resistance and for the movement and for the nation, or just raise his kids and not be in danger. Because this is one particularly important scene where Salim and Noor are on their way home and they've missed this randomly imposed curfew and they get stopped by IDS soldiers and they're being threatened, and they're, you know, threatening Salim that if he doesn't say these really horrible, degrading, meaning things in front of his very young son, they're going to shoot him essentially. And there's a lot of like sadisticness from the IDS soldiers, who are also themselves look so fucking young, which I think is part of it. They're so young and they're being conditioned in this way. And then after that, Noor starts hating his father and holding a lot of contempt for him for not standing up for himself. And then in Noor's age, whether he should go to class or be a teenager who has experienced something
really traumatic
nobody in this world does. Occupation in the current present day and age, right? So I think it, again, through this linear story I was talking about, it talks about these themes really well.
I also feel like it's always obviously impossible to capture all of that feeling and trauma and like the experience of growing up and doing all of that under those circumstances. I think with the time jumps that you mentioned, like you don't see him grow up, you kind of, it skips forward. I feel our brains are better at imagining things that are not there, best or worst case scenarios, and never able to really top that in depiction. So it sometimes just works better at like not showing and letting you imagine that, because you can make it worse in your head than you can ever do it on screen in some degrees.
100%, yeah. So yeah, those are things I really enjoyed about the film. Enjoyed in the sense, appreciated.
Yeah.
What I think my criticism of it are like, I do have some, which is that I think it went on for a little bit too long. It's 2 hours and 25 minutes. But the last, 45 minutes when the whole organ donation discussion is coming up. And again, it's such an interesting,
topic.
question to be asking. I just don't think it was done at the same pace or with the same like depth and interest that the rest of the film was done with. I was like, where are we going at this point? And because it keeps going. You think it's going to end and then it keeps going. You think it's going to end and then it keeps going. And that happens at multiple moments, which is not something that should be happening, especially when what comes next doesn't. But it's not that the conversations aren't important, because one of the things that happens is like Salim and Hanan go visit one of the kids, and the only Israeli kid who literally got Noor's heart.
Okay.
And so it's such an interesting conversation. And we find out at the end that Hanan is talking to the grown-up version of that kid and stuff. But I feel like it could have been done in a very different way. Like she's telling the story of this family history to the Israeli kid who got Noor's heart. And all the conversations are important, but that's all they feel like. They just feel important. They feel like they're there because they're important, not because you genuinely want to explore them in depth. I feel like you can make a whole movie just about the ethics of organ donation of a Palestinian person in occupied Palestine.
It feels like, when you're at the end of an essay and like you forgot to really talk about these things. These are important things, but you never really got the time to explore them. But you just throw them in there to get it over with.
Exactly. And that just keeps stretching your essay like longer and longer, like a conclusion ends up being really fucking long.
Exactly. Again, not to diminish this. It's just whenever we talk about specifically anything with stakes as high as this, or like just a scenario as grave as this, being in any way.
I think it goes to say that we agree with the message and we agree of its importance, and we agree about that the issues being talked about are important. It's just the way that they're being done through this medium of film that we're having issues with.
I think it's anytime we critique or anyone critiques things like this, it can be sometimes hard to like separate the medium from the message.
Exactly. But I think the film ends fantastically with really old Hanan and really old Salim, with Salim finally having returned to Jaffa in this landscape he doesn't recognize, because it is occupied Jaffa in the form of Tel Aviv /Yafo, as they call it. These places that used to be his neighborhood and his orange orchard and where he used to like play and where he used to go with his family, they don't look like that anymore. They look like sanitized European Mediterranean city, right?
Is this like a hypothetical future?
No, it is the current day. It is current day.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So this film is set in 1948 with Sharif's story, 1978 with Salim's story, and 1988 with Noor's story. And then we're in 2022, where the film ends. And it ends with this poem that Sharif used to make Salim recite when he was young. And it's a really well-known Egyptian poet's poem, and it kind of goes like, I am the sea, in my depth treasures lie, have you asked the divers about my pearls? And it's like the film has this little joke about how it's about the Arabic language and about the metaphors and why metaphors are shit. But also that's what poetry is, and we know poetry is really important to the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance movement, etc., etc. So I think it ends beautifully. I just feel like we'd gotten there differently.
I think that's understandable.
Yeah, I think Cherien Dabis, who's like director, writer, and stars in it as Hanan, has taken on a massive feat. But she's, I hate to use this word, this is what we're talking about with the Netflixification of films. This is the Hollywoodification of a film. I really, really appreciate it, and I really liked so many elements of it. It's just I had these little criticisms. But overall, I do think it was a fantastic film, and like added to the corpus of like films about Palestine that we have watched and talked about. It's quite significant, and I think made on the largest scale, if I'm not wrong.
I like this review on Letterboxd of this film, which says, just reading the first sentence of it, which is like, some films make you think, others make you feel. This one does both, and it doesn't let you go.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So yeah, those are our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us with musical assets from Pixabay. If you enjoyed this, please do share it.
Bye-bye.
Oh, see you again next time. I forgot to say that.